Hi everyone, my name is John. Welcome back to my channel. I am on a spate of catching up with reviews of books I've read since late last year. And this is another book I read for Historathon, roughly late summer, early fall. The months, I guess, July through September. And this was a book I bought from Princeton University Press. You know, I talk about them all the time. And I've always been one to be very honest about their books. Sometimes I think they're okay, and sometimes I think they're spectacular. And I just wanted to share with everyone one I thought was just exemplary. Especially if you're interested in art history, and especially if you're interested in one of the greatest artists of all time to come out of, well, especially Renaissance Italy. You can already tell from the title, but it is Michelangelo. And this book from Princeton University is something I just need to sing its praises in front of a camera. It's called Michelangelo, God's Architect. The story of his final years and greatest masterpiece. And there you can see the masterpiece on the cover there. It is the New St. Peter's. And this is by William E. Wallace. In 1546, Michelangelo was a 70-year-old man, living at a time when the average lifespan was probably below 50. He had an entire lifetime's worth of work to look back on and a reputation he knew would outlive him. He had completed the Pietà before the age of 25, the Pietà by the age of 25, and the David by the time he was 30. So those were already more than a generation in his past. At an age where even most of us, even today, would have rested on our laurels. He chose to accept a new papal commission that was presented to him and become the principal architect of the new St. Peter's Basilica. With his preternatural abilities still very much intact, he took up his work, and William Wallace's book, which came out from Princeton University Press in 2019, is the short. And when I say short, it's a very quick read. It's 240 pages or so. Short, highly readable, and poignant story of the last 2 decades of Michelangelo's life that he spent working on this, maybe the greatest in scale, the grandest in scale project he ever took up. The first few chapters of the book discuss the projects Michelangelo was finishing up when the Pope tapped him on the shoulder to head up St. Peter's, including the Palazzo Farnese and putting the last touches on the tomb of Julius II, Pope Julius II, while the last 5 chapters focus on the construction of St. Peter's. In 1505, Pope Julius II decided that the old St. Peter's, which had served Rome for over a millennium, should be torn down and rebuilt from the ground up. The first architect assigned to the project was Bramante, but progress suffered from a series of uneven fits and starts for over 40 years, until Michelangelo finally took the job in, as I said, 1546. The problems he faced that William Wallace describes in this book are staggeringly complex, even for someone who would have been half of Michelangelo's age. One of the former architects, whose name was Antonio di Sangallo, had an ardent group of loyalists who continued to advocate for his design, which Michelangelo knew would result in total architectural failure. The people working under him, despite their best intentions, couldn't reconcile themselves to Michelangelo's new plans. But slowly, very slowly, he made inroads and started to change minds. Michelangelo was nothing if not a studious micromanager. This is an aspect of his personality you don't always hear about outside of his art. Quote, he selected and inspected all of his materials, arranged for ropes, tackle, and boats, haggled with carters and shippers about fees, and made drawings for even the tiniest, seemingly most insignificant details, before turning the paper over to make calculations, count bushels of grain, draft a letter, and compose poetry. End quote. What makes Michelangelo's acceptance of this gargantuan project even more touching is that he knew he would never live to see it finished. He knew this would take many, many, many years beyond when he died, even if he lived to be a very, very old man, and he did. Despite pouring nearly 2 decades of his life into the project and dying just a few weeks short of his 89th birthday in 1564, the new St. Peter's wouldn't be completed until 1626, over 60 years after he died. Wallace does just an incredible job. An incredible job at focusing on Michelangelo's assistants, his relatives, his acquaintances, drawing heavily from the large amount of correspondence he left behind, a lot of which we still have, miraculously. In doing so, Wallace does a lot of damage to Giorgio Vasari's insinuations that Michelangelo was a quiet, brooding, sort of misanthropic type. His voluminous correspondence, like I said earlier, shows him to be a pretty warm and caring and downright diplomatic person in his dealings with not only other artisans, which he clearly had to do because he had to change a lot of minds, but his friends and the members of his own household. Wallace still, if there's one thing I had to sort of criticize in the book, Wallace still holds on to a romantic notion of the artistic genius, which I think is unnecessary, but nevertheless thoroughly embedded in more popular writing about the great artist, capital G, capital A, visual and otherwise. How this sort of artist is a font of spontaneous creativity and genius. That's basically what the romantic notion of genius is all about. Wallace has done his homework and harnessed all of his scholarly resources. He doesn't need to sort of lean on that. I think it's an outworn way of thinking about artistic work and artists. But understanding and appreciating the tremendous amount of work that went into St. Peter's is not to diminish the immensity of the achievement, which is truly immense. When you read this, even this short book, to see the kinds of detail that he just spent nearly 19 years of his life working on, up until the very, very end of his life. 88 years old and still going to the construction site every single day to oversee, and you might even say micromanage, some of the things that were being done, to see how stones were being laid and bricks were being taken in from quarries, and it's incredible. As someone whose art history knowledge is, let's be euphemistic and say, aspirational at best, I can't imagine a better biography of the late Michelangelo and his late life and his late work. And I think that Princeton University Press is making books like this, smart books, scholarly books, but still accessible to the interested layperson like me, should excite anyone who takes ideas and history seriously. This is maybe one of the best books I read last year, and I would recommend it to absolutely anyone without reservation who is interested in the topic. So, if you have read it, definite or know anything to shed on shed any light on what I've said, let me know in the comments. I love comments. I don't get enough comments. Um, Michelangelo, God's architect. The story of his final years and greatest masterpiece by William E. Wallace. An absolutely tremendous book. I will be back soon with more bookish stuff. Bye.